Well, hello. Welcome to the A World of Difference podcast again, where we love to talk about our differences and bring those differences to the table and make a difference together. Today, we have a very special guest from Oakland, California on the show today. Hi, Chris, and welcome to the show.
Hi, Lori. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Yes, it is. And I love the city of Oakland, being in the Bay Area. We love to visit our friends that are there. There's great culture, history, food, and also many social challenges that you're addressing with your foundation. So I'd love to just start off by asking you to tell us a little bit about yourself and what brought you into this journey of becoming the CEO and president of Eat.Learn.Play.
Yeah, so about myself, I am not born and raised in Oakland. I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, and in Hartford, Connecticut, of all places, but have been out in the Bay Area in California for the better part of the last 11 or 12 years. So it definitely feels like home. It's where we're raising our kids. How I got to Eat, Learn, Play, though, is somewhat interesting, especially for maybe a global audience like yours. For years, I ran a global anti-malaria campaign for the UN Foundation, trying to rally, the largest collection possible of grassroots supporters in the U.S. so that the U.S. does its part to help end this, scourge that's been around, for almost all of mankind, right, in malaria. And so did a lot of fundraising, a lot of advocacy around malaria over the years. And it was in 2011 when I was leading that campaign that we recruited this young, oft injured point guard for the lowly Golden State Warriors to be a champion, an ambassador for us in the fight against malaria. And so that's how I came to get to know Stephen Curry. And so, Stephen was involved with me in that malaria work for just over 5 years. And over that time, we traveled to, refugee camps on the border of the Congo, advocated at the White House for U.S. foreign aid funding in the fight against malaria. And did a host of other, interesting and important activities, to the point where, you go through these experiences with someone, and there's that trust and that loyalty and that familiarity that gets established. So I was in a really fortunate position, Lori, some 5 years ago, probably, when Stephen and Aisha, his wife, our co-founder, when they got serious about starting a foundation of their own and really trying to bring their philanthropic passions together to do something big, I was in this really fortunate position of being the person that they called to help think through, help to dream about what this foundation could be and what kind of impact it could have. And then over the course of several really fun and inspiring dinner table conversations with them, came the question of would you ever want to leave what you're doing and help to come build this and launch it and run it with us, this unnamed foundation? And for me, the answer was a resounding yes. Of course, the opportunity to create something with two of the all-time great people in the Currys. Yeah. And leverage their networks, their voices, their platforms, and their passions to do good. It's it was a dream come true. And so that was in late 2018, and it's been a wild ride really ever since.
Oh, I can only imagine. What a dream come true to work with a couple like that. Obviously, all of us in the Bay Area love the Currys, the work that they do. I think in a culture like the United States that seems to be thriving off of narcissism, to see people actually care and give back to their community in ways that are so authentic and passionate. And, I got to hear Aisha speak when I was in Abu Dhabi and International Women's Day at the Forbes 3050. And not only was she there talking about the great work that she does in the Bay Area, but also we got to, enjoy some of the culinary creations that she's a part of. And I just think it's so beautiful to see people not just basking in their own glory of success, but also being able to give back in a place like Oakland. Like, we started talking off at the beginning, and the history of Oakland is so important to the United States and the world. Some of the civil rights activism that's come out of Oakland, but also it's so expensive. If everybody who lives in the United States is aware, right? The Bay Area has some of the highest real estate in the nation. Cost of living is high. And when people struggle with food scarcity, it's very, very difficult. So we see the mobile bus, I guess it is. What do you call it? And there's like a basketball goal attached to it. Explain a little bit about the work that you do in terms of going around the community in Oakland.
Yeah, so we do a lot of work, right? In and around Oakland, we do a lot of grant making. We do a ton of work, Lori, through community partnerships, and then we do have some programs of our own that we lead, and that are really fun representations of our mission. And one of those is the Eat.Learn.Play bus, which is Eat.Learn.Play's mission on wheels. So we did a lot of work when we were very early on as a startup, feeding the community during COVID, right? High quality produce, meals produced, by local restaurants, by working with the school district to make sure students had access to meals during the pandemic. We did a lot of that. And one of the big things that we learned is how important it is to be able to meet the community where they are with the resources that they need. And for Eat.Learn.Play, and sort of true to how unique and special and passionate the Currys are, for us, it's not just meeting people where they are with the resources that they need, but also doing so in a really fun and imaginative way, where it becomes an experience, for those kids and those families as well, and one that's full of dignity, right, which is often lost when people are struggling and receiving charity. So we had this idea in 2021, I guess, to create this Eat.Learn.Play bus. And what we brought to life is it's pretty remarkable. So we converted, we did a total strip down of like a 37-foot long, old school bus, and created just this dream. It's the coolest school bus in the world. It's probably the easiest way to describe it. But down the driver's side of the bus opens up to be a free mobile bookstore for the community, right? Where kids can come up to the Eat.Learn.Play bus and browse between hundreds of books to take home to read and to keep, 3, 4, 5 culturally relevant books, to try, as part of our effort, much larger effort, to create a culture of literacy in Oakland and make sure that kids have the support they need to be reading at grade level at the appropriate times, right? Literacy is a major priority for Eat.Learn.Play. And so that's the driver's side of the bus. It's an incredible experience. And then on the passenger side of the bus, it's a free mobile market for the community, where we partner with local restaurants. We partner with our local food bank to have it be an experience where kids and families come up to the bus and they're being given grocery staples, fresh produce, and then meals that are produced by local restaurants. And almost all those restaurants are, women or minority owned. And so again, it's not just giving the community the resources they need, but doing it at the highest quality possible. We've put a basketball hoop on the Eat.Learn.Play bus, so it becomes a place where kids can congregate and play. But what we found, right, that's so special about this thing, beyond just providing resources that the community needs, is this experience again of receiving charity. This bus totally flips it on its head, where normally there could be real stigma attached to, receiving food from a food bank, right? And instead, what we have with the Eat.Learn.Play bus is like kids just flocking to the bus, right? To receive these resources. And the food bank, right, who helps us operate this bus, they've never seen anything like it, to the extent now where we've helped to rebrand their other mobile pantries that are out in the community to be more like the Eat.Learn.Play bus, just because of how well it's been received by the community. So we've got that, and that's, a good representation of the work we do, but also just a small part of what we're trying to do to, provide support and open up opportunities for a generation of Oakland kids.
It's so beautiful. It's such a game changer, and pun intended in every way, because Stephen Curry has done that in more ways than one, obviously, not just with the Golden State Warriors, but of course with this, and giving back in his own hometown. And I think that one of the things that I really appreciate about the work that you do, having also worked in partnership development and nonprofit fundraising, all that is very challenging. But at the same time, we make decisions. Who do we partner with? Who do we privilege even in that space? And so the fact that women-owned and BIPOC-owned businesses are partners, that was an intentional choice. It's an admirable choice. It's consistent with, who the Currys are and the work that they do. And I think that people really resonate with that kind of authenticity. There's so much complicity in our world, and so much complicity contributes to the poverty that we see around us, the lack of resources, the lack of opportunity. And Oakland is full of that particular type of history as well. It's throughout the Bay Area. And it may be, in a more obvious way in a place like Oakland. But I also just want to focus in on your foundation's name, which is so catchy and so intentional, I'm quite sure. But it encompasses these three different crucial aspects of child development. So I'd love for you to elaborate kind of on each of these three pillars and how they contribute to kind of your overall mission of what you're doing.
Yeah, no, I would love to. And there's a great story there with the name too, that I think speaks to the Currys, right? And Aisha and Stephen, and, how this foundation exists to really share a lot of what they've been blessed with, as Aisha calls it, like the village that's around us that might need our support, right? So that was sort of the original inspiration for Eat.Learn.Play. But when we were building the foundation in 2019, the Currys around, when we were around the dinner table, they were really adamant about three things when we were launching or building this foundation. One was the focus on Oakland, right? Lori, you've said it really well a couple of times already in this conversation, but Oakland is an incredible, vibrant community with so much great history, and also a community with a lot of need, right? And this is the city where the Currys became a family, and it became their adopted hometown. Oakland wrapped its arms around the Currys very early on, and the Currys through Eat.Learn.Play we're wrapping our arms back around the city and trying to do everything we can for the next generation. So that was the first thing that they cared a lot about. The second thing they cared a lot about were these issue areas that you talked about, right? Aisha had been working around childhood hunger and nutrition for a decade, I think, at this point, doing some incredible things, including partnering with Michelle Obama and her Let's Move initiative, and doing a lot of work with No Kid Hungry, a great campaign who we still work with. Stephen, he was the one, not surprisingly, who really wanted this foundation to also make sure that kids had safe places and provided access for kids to be active and participate in youth sports, because he knows just how important that is to childhood development. And so much of the incredible person that he is today, he traces back to a lot of the lessons and the characteristics that he learned through competing, whether it was with his dad and with his brother on the basketball court, on the golf course, baseball field, whatever. And then the learn pillar, just, and I think it speaks to the Curry's humility too. Like, they both knew that education was really important, right? In growing a successful child and in their own passions. But it took us a while to figure out, what's the best place for us to have an impact in the education space, which is just so broad, right? And so deep. We can't do everything. So it took us a year and a half to really hone in on childhood literacy as the dominant focus of our learn pillar. Because we found out that, in Oakland, like almost 85% of Black and Latino elementary school students in our school district are reading below grade level in elementary schools. When you can draw a straight line between third grade reading levels and success in life. And not just that, the Currys have a young family. Stephen is the son of a school teacher and administrator. And so the whole idea of literacy really resonated with him. And so these three issues, like at first, Lori, I was just like, how can we be working on all of these disparate issues, right? Like, what are we going to call ourselves? And then it did dawn on me, like, oh my gosh, like the Currys are way ahead of me on this. Like these three pieces, the nutrition, the education, and the play piece, these are core ingredients for a happy, healthy, successful childhood, right? And so that's a little bit how Eat.Learn.Play came to be. But the name itself is an even funnier story. That is, that one came from Aisha. When we were building the foundation, when I came in, their financial advisor was the one who helped lead and this is a little inside baseball, but was the one who registered the charity with the IRS so that we could get up and running. And it was registered as the Stephen and Aisha Curry Family Foundation. That's who we were for the first couple of months. And in conversation, Aisha was like, we have to change that name immediately. Like, I don't want to do anything until we change the name, because the Stephen and Aisha Curry Family Foundation, that puts the focus entirely on us, which is the last thing that we want in this effort, right? It doesn't say anything about the impact that we want to have. And so right then, Stephen's like, yeah, this is about impact, not legacy. And that's sort of been a mantra for us over our first 4 years. And so it was from Aisha and that mandate to change our name and those three pillar areas where there was like this eureka moment of, oh my gosh, Eat, Learn, Play. Like it's catchy. It says what we're about. And in a way that I think is joyful and playful, which is also how we try to show up for the community.
What a beautiful story. I love the focus on impact versus legacy. It just tells you kind of where their heart is, and what they treasure. And I think also, you worked with the UN with, the malaria situation. I come out of I worked in Indonesia in the tsunami relief because that hit the area I'd already been working in, and was a liaison with the UN during that time because I was one of the only expats who'd been living there and knew enough about the culture and language to be helpful in terms of that, all the big, massive effort you could imagine. And life can get really serious when you're dealing with food scarcity, when you're dealing with people's lives, when, you're dealing with a lot of anxiety that brings when people don't have their hierarchy of needs met, especially with children. It can be quite hard. And I love that you have play as one of your pillars, and it's so obviously consistent. With Steph Curry, obviously play being his career, but at the same time, you bring in her love for the eating part. And then obviously both of them are such learners and value that as well. I love how that all just sort of came together and is very consistent, but also super impactful, because when we just think about play, when a time of COVID was going on in the Bay Area, my own teens were in the whole year and a half of online school. And we saw, the American Pediatrics Association come out in the US and talk about how anxiety is huge among this Gen Z, especially because of not having access to physical play. Obviously, online gaming was happening and everything, but physically being able to play. And so I know that often play, even in just our regular public school system in the United States, is often underestimated as a tool in childhood development. So in addition to the basketball goal on the side of your awesome bus, how does your foundation encourage and facilitate active play among children, and kind of what positive impacts have you observed?
Yeah, so it's such a great point, right? And we did a giant landscape analysis of play in Oakland with the Aspen Institute last year in a report we put out about 12 months ago that talked about so many of these things, right? And provided recommendations for the role that Eat.Learn.Play and community partners can play in improving, play outcomes for kids, which again, play is so critical to physical health, mental health, academic success. It's, playing at school where a lot of kids meet their friends and find their people. And during COVID, especially, there was a total lack of that. And the effects of that were pretty devastating. But still in Oakland today, now that we've emerged from the pandemic, the statistics are scary, right? In Oakland, something like only 15% of kids are getting the recommended 60 minutes of physical activity every day. And a lot of that is because there's a lack of quality, safe places to play and be active. And then, opportunities to participate in quality youth sports is very, very limited. And there are barriers to play in those sports, based on a lot of things, including cost and transportation issues for a lot of these kids. And so Eat.Learn.Play, we've been in the lab for the better part of a year. And actually, in just a month's time, we're going to make, I think, probably the biggest announcement that we've made in our 4 years in terms of our new and pretty bold strategic direction that I can't fully divulge here, but safe to say, right, that it's a school-based strategy, right? Recognizing, again, going back to one of your initial points, like we realize that we need to be meeting kids where they are with the resources that they need, right? And kids are in school, right? Schools are the system in Oakland, in America, and across the world where kids go to eat, learn, and play every day, right? And so there's going to be some focus that we put on that school experience for a generation of kids. And our play strategy, has been and largely will continue to sort of have 2 or 3 prongs, right? One of them will be the continued support of summer camp access for Oakland kids, right? So that's been something we've been doing for 5 years, providing scholarship support so that all kids get to experience the joys of going to summer camps. Again, those are places where kids go to eat, learn, and play during the summer. But with regards to schools, right, there's a major emphasis that we are putting on school sports as places where access to youth sports can happen in an equitable and high quality way. And then one of the big things that we've been doing for the last year or so now, and will continue to do into the future, is remodeling schoolyards. And this came out of a recommendation from the Aspen Institute. But in Oakland, like in a lot of places, schoolyards are somewhat, it can be, right, unsafe and uninspiring places. Like you've heard about the concrete jungle. But we're reimagining and remodeling schoolyards across the city. So this year we are remodeling 6 schoolyards, taking these somewhat uninspiring spaces and building brand new state-of-the-art, safe, multi-sport basketball courts, right? Building these incredible mini soccer pitches, because what we hear from the community is that, people love soccer. So we're putting soccer pitches into these schoolyards. We work with the school community and especially the students to design and dream up like their dream playgrounds. And we bring those into the schoolyards. Every schoolyard has outdoor classrooms and community gardens, and then we paint murals around them. And so what we're doing here, right, with these schoolyards, and there's an ambition we have to do a lot more, is we're taking these spaces where kids are spending an hour or more every day playing and learning and hanging out with their friends, and using our imagination to help dream up the best possible spaces, the spaces that they deserve, and that will help give them pride, right, in the schools that they attend. And so again, it's a largely school-based strategy, but we're trying to be smart and use data to inform, how we show up for these kids and give them the opportunities to be physically active and ultimately across all of our pillars, right, reach their full potential.
Wow. Well, we certainly look forward to that announcement, and already what you're doing is so impactful. It reminds me of how when I was studying to understand more about community development and the work I was doing in Indonesia years ago, in an effort to have a more decolonized understanding of how we could do things, went to be trained in the Philippines in a rural development model by Filipinos. And one of the things they taught me and the others studying under them was the value of gathering together people in the community that you're hoping to impact and just listening, because it's really not rocket science. People in the community know what their needs are. So to superimpose that, you've worked in nonprofit internationally, and some nonprofits, even when I looked at the tsunami and people that came in without listening and didn't understand the culture and superimpose their ideas, they often didn't work. We had things like pork and beans showing up, and people are eat halal. It's under Sharia law. And we had cold weather tents for winter, and it's tropical island, so a little bit of listening would have gone a long way. I love that you're listening to children, though, because I find that that's the least likely people. People come in with their power as an adult and overpower children. It happens in the school system with teachers and principals all the time. But the fact that you're listening to the children and allowing them to reimagine and dream with you shows me that it's probably going to work. Because when people come in and don't listen and give somebody something, we have these famous rope pumps that we talk about in Indonesia, where they're trying to desalinate wells and they didn't ask the community. They installed them and nobody fixed them because they're they're not ours, they're yours. So when you come in and it's dreamt together and the children are reimagining it, they're very likely going to use those spaces because you've involved them. I think it's a beautiful process. Do you have any story around that, a success story or anything memorable in that process that would be helpful for us to understand?
Well, I mean, specific to the Schoolyards, in our Instagram page at Eat.Learn.Play has some incredible stories of these design days that happen at schools. Where kids and teachers and even the local community, we host a design day for them too, can come in and brainstorm. We give them big sheets of paper and they can draw out their dream spaces, and it's so fun. And while we haven't been able to install the hot tubs that some kids have asked for in the Schoolyards, or the 40-foot tall Model T-Rex, we have been able to bring a lot of things to life. But a picture is worth 1,000 words, and there are pictures on our Instagram page of some of these incredible designs that kids have dreamt up. But you're right, it is super empowering, and this is a lesson that I've had to learn a couple times in my career, right? Trying to deliver anti-malaria prevention and treatment tools in Africa, right? Especially nets, if you're not culturally sensitive, those nets are going to end up not being used or being used for different reasons other than to prevent the spread of malaria. But it's been something we've had to be super conscious of too in Oakland, right? We are a new foundation, right? And we're not all deeply embedded Oakland natives, right? We've had to come in and with a real partnership mentality, right? And try to be deferential to and seek the input from community leaders, right? Who are leading organizations that have been around working on these issues for a long time to try to understand the issues and the community needs. And still to this day, there's really nothing that we do in this community by ourselves, right? We are partnership driven. And so for us, it's aligning with the food bank and the local literacy organizations around the bus, right? And the Oakland Public Library with these little lending libraries that we have around the city. And then I talked earlier about grant making. Like, our model is to find these partners and these leaders who do great work and bring our own assets, right, to them so that you can have these sort of magical 1 + 1 = 3 outcomes when you bring these entities together. So there's that real partnership mentality, but also, we have done giant reports over the last 12 to 16 months, landscape reports on literacy and on play in Oakland, because those were the second and third pillars that we really brought up to speed after COVID. And those were giant projects that were led by third parties where there was like real deep listening that went on, right? And a lot of research. And you're right, it's been totally invaluable to us. And what success I think Eat.Learn.Play can claim to date, for the impact that we've had, it can be traced back to, that idea or that model of just bringing the community to the inside of what we're trying to do.
So beautiful. Well, I know that our listeners are difference makers. They want to make a difference together. And so many people around the world are probably listening to you talk. And I know that fundraising is really challenging and kind of the light version of a recession that we've been in over the last little bit. And often when we have economies around the world dip like that, the most vulnerable among us are hit the hardest. And so if people would love to be involved in your work, either through donating or volunteering or whatever, where can we point them to know more about the work that you do?
Yeah, no, we're pretty easy to find. We are at Eat.Learn.Play.org. And because our principals, Stephen and Aisha, are very active on social media, we are too. So we're easy to find, especially on Instagram. Listen, none of this work happens, right? None of this impact happens without the village around us. And that includes great donors and partners. The Currys, since day one, agreed to cover all administrative and fundraising, overhead costs for the foundation so that every dollar that comes in from the outside goes directly to the impact that we're trying to have in Oakland. There's also, if you're local, these schoolyard remodels that I've been talking about require a ton of volunteer support. We have a couple hundred volunteers that come out when we build these schoolyards, and it's an incredible experience. And so I'd say those are ways to get involved, but also, Lori, just food banks are everywhere, right? And schools are everywhere. And so I think, if we can also just inspire people to get involved locally wherever they are, like that's just as good. We don't need all of the support at Eat.Learn.Play, but if we can spark someone getting passionate about supporting their local food bank or bringing support or helping to tutor, kids in their local schools, then that's great too. You alluded to the fact that there's need everywhere, and so we're super passionate about people getting involved in their own hometowns.
Well, thank you so much for the work that you do. It was wonderful to be in Abu Dhabi and hear Aisha speak about this, and then also be connected with the people she brought there with her, like Stephen, who connected us. And I just am so grateful for you being on the show today, for the work that you're doing. I just hope that it continues to be an encouragement to the community of Oakland, but also just real impact. And it sounds like you're already doing that. So we're going to have you hang out a little bit longer just for another question for our difference maker community. But in the meantime, as we're signing off here, I just want to say thank you for the work that you do, and let us know at the A World of Difference podcast community how we can be helpful. We will certainly look for that big announcement.
No, thanks, Lori. On behalf of Aisha and Stephen and the Eat.Learn.Play team, you have no idea how grateful we are to be able to have someone like you who's willing to allow us to share our story.
Thanks for being on today, Chris.
No, thank you.